I would say that Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is probably one of the single greatest stories I've ever seen depicted, and definitely the greatest story in an anime. The only contenders that even come close are Avatar: The Last Airbender or perhaps the first half of Death Note. Fullmetal stands comfortably above the rest for a lot of reasons. It has some of the most intriguing and lovable characters in anime. It has a unique and memorable magic system with a satisfying logic behind it all. And this is all without mentioning the fantastic fights and animation. But I think the primary reason behind the draw to Fullmetal Alchemist is this. I have never seen another series that so frequently and masterfully makes the viewer ask questions. If it wasn't obvious at this point, spoilers ahead. I don't typically do spoiler warnings on these videos, but Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is so good that you deserve to watch it before this video. Everybody else ready? Okay, so here's the thing about asking questions. It's sort of one of the main reasons we keep watching things. We watch Naruto because we're hooked at the beginning with the question, what's the deal with the nine-tailed fox? We watch 40 episodes of JoJo in a row because every episode ends with a cliffhanger, begging the question of what's going to happen next. Fullmetal Alchemist's story does the same thing, but it isn't just once at the beginning of the series, nor is it just small situational questions at the end of every episode. No, Fullmetal asks huge, fascinating questions once every handful of episodes, and it doesn't even do it directly. Some examples might help. Let's start at the beginning. We learn very early on that Ed and Al are searching for a way to get their bodies back, and they've decided the answer is a Philosopher's Stone, something that will allow them to break the laws of alchemy and create matter without giving anything up in exchange. This is immediately quizzical. How can something break these well-established rules? In what way can you circumvent what is essentially science in this world? And where do these Philosopher's Stones come from anyway? All of these questions are intriguing enough on their own, but before we get an answer, more questions are thrust upon us. We get to see the boys' backstory, where they attempt to bring their mother back to life using alchemy. The process goes horribly wrong, and the visuals clearly represent that. Besides the terrifying mass of decaying flesh on the floor, the disappearance of Al, and the blood from Ed's leg, we also get visual cues that are more confusing than they are scary. The giant eye opens up on the floor, the black hands rise out of it, and the gigantic metallic gate behind Ed, and of course, Truth. This makes us ask, what exactly is this Truth character? What does the gate represent? Why was Ed shown all of this? I remember when I first watched the series, I thought maybe Truth was his mother, or perhaps a demon of some sort, lying about who he really was. The concepts presented were so abstract and interesting that I couldn't stop myself from binging as much as possible. And while the questions about human transmutation, truth, and the gate were still being mulled over in my mind, we get ambushed with even more questions. Who are these two? We see lust and gluttony kill and devour Father Cornello after his fight with the Elrics and Lior, and we're left wondering about these two freaks of nature, and what do they know about Philosopher's Stones? You see, very few shows offer this many questions so early on in the story, and for good reason. If you just keep throwing strange and mysterious concepts at a viewer, eventually they'll just get bored of wondering. And if Fullmetal had introduced even one or two more questions, the same thing would have happened. But it didn't ask another question. It answered one. Episode 7 of the anime is where we get our first big revelation, and it's huge. Philosopher's Stones are created by sacrificing human souls. Oh, okay. So human souls can be used to bypass the laws of alchemy. Souls must be really powerful. Maybe that was what the boys needed to bring back their mother. Her soul was the missing ingredient. Maybe that's what Truth was talking about. Oh, and Al. Al is just a soul in a suit of armor, right? Maybe his soul has some power. You see that? All of that pondering, all of those questions, those come from just one answer that's given to us, the audience. If you were starting to get bogged down by all the mysteries, this is what keeps you hooked. A tiny little piece of the puzzle that lets you see a fraction of the bigger picture. and Arakawa does this really well. She sprinkles answers in among the questions just frequently enough to keep you on the edge of your seat for all 64 episodes. This continues on for quite a while. We get bombarded with questions about the fifth laboratory and Scar's backstory, and then we get an answer about lust, gluttony, and now envy. They're all homunculi, or artificial humans created by the power of Philosopher's Stones. And of course, this opens up more questions. Who created the homunculi? What is their purpose? Do they have souls themselves? Next, we get more episodes, a badass scene where Mustang kills Lust, and then more questions. Is Al's body out there somewhere, absorbing Ed's nutrients? Why does gluttony resemble the Gate of Truth? And what's up with these ruins from the ancient city of Xerxes? And it's at this point that the answers get more interesting. We see Ed open up a Gate of Truth to escape gluttony, and he sees Alphonse's body is still there in Truth's realm. Their theory was correct. Ed has been keeping his body alive all this time. Now, the reason I say that the answers get more interesting at this point is because they don't just create more questions. We are far enough along in the story that we can use context clues and pieces of information we've gathered so far to make solid conclusions. In other words, the questions being presented now, about halfway through the story, are less intriguing than the questions posed at the beginning, but the answers are starting to get more rewarding. As the series reaches a close, the new questions are less important, as the answers get more and more satisfying. We want to know who Father is, why he looks like von Hohenheim, and how he can cancel out alchemic abilities. But we get to learn that Führer Bradley is actually the homunculus of wrath, and we get an answer to who Scar is, the history of Ishval, the motivation behind Mustang, and the true identity of the homunculus pride. We get asked why May and Scar's alchemy wasn't cancelled out by Father, but we get a short answer to why Hohenheim left his family, because he would outlive them. It's at this point that the questions and answers reach a fever pitch. We see Father devising a plan involving Ed, Al, Hohenheim, Izumi, and one more. This grand plan is clearly meant to be the end game, the final goal of our big bad. So as a reward, we get one of the most satisfying answers in the entire series, the origin of Van Hohenheim and Father. It ties in all of our questions about the lost city of Xerxes, Hohenheim's immortality, the reason behind the creation of the homunculi, and so many more little plot threads. Of course, we do eventually get an answer to what Father's plan is, involving the gigantic Amestris transmutation circle during the eclipse, summoning the power of God. This is, of course, totally badass, and is immediately followed by the awesome reverse transmutation circle, courtesy of Hohenheim, and then the battles between Scar and Bradley, and Ed and Father, where we see Al trade his soul here on Earth for Ed's arm, trapped in the world of truth. The fights are great in their own right, but after all the dust settles, we are left with one more question. The same question that was posed at the very beginning of the series, the main reason for the Elric brothers' entire journey. How are they going to get Alphonse's body back? They refuse to use the souls trapped in the Philosopher's Stone on principle, and now neither Al's body or soul are here in the real world anymore. But Ed figures it out. He gets it, and he starts drawing a transmutation circle on the ground at the behest of everyone around him. What's so great about this scene is, it brings forward a question that at one point was very intriguing to us, but was sort of lost in the fray, full of Philosopher's Stones, homunculi, ancient Xerxean destruction, and the plots of Father. It all comes full circle, pun entirely intended, and Ed enters the realm of truth and trades his alchemy for Alphonse. Now, I don't know about any of you, but this was never something I ever even considered as an answer. I always thought Ed would sacrifice his own life, or maybe Hohenheim would, or perhaps they would give in and just use the Philosopher's Stone. This was, at least for me, the most satisfying answer that could have been given to a question we were entrapped with for the past 60+ episodes. Fullmetal Alchemist doesn't have the best fights in anime, nor is it the system of powers that are the most intricate or interesting. The reason it is so great is because the characters ask questions that we also want answers to, and then it has the guts to answer them. So what do you think about Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood and my analysis here? Let me know down in those comments, or reach out to me on my social medias, which are linked below. Writing this video reminded me of why I love this series so much. I'm really glad I got to make it for you guys. Let me know about any other series you'd want me to talk about here. And until next time, I've been Beware. Stay frosty.